I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:31. And up first, the land acknowledgement statement, and I'll ask our city clerk, Matthew Trenham, to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wurrung, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous peoples, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you, Matthew. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? I have a mover, Councillor Senton, seconder, Councillor Longo. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Tonight is our first budget meeting, the 2023 budget, and I want to thank everybody for making time for these budget meetings as we sent them out and everybody responded, and that is excellent. And I also want to say, I want to thank staff for the work they did in preparing this budget. There was a lot of hours that went into to get to the point we're starting at. And before I turn it over to our CEO, Manoj Dalwari, I want to thank them for all the hours and all the input and all the hard decisions that you made to put this budget together. So I'll turn this over now to our CEO, Manoj Dalwari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, members of council. I want to welcome everyone here this evening by providing a brief overview of the draft budget. Tonight is our first budget meeting. Our next meetings scheduled for Wednesday, February 8th, and if required, Wednesday, February 15th. Earlier this month, you were provided with a draft budget binder. Hopefully, you were able to spend some time reviewing it. Tonight, staff will present draft operating and capital budgets for your consideration. In absence of any budget guidance from council this year, staff developed the draft budget keeping in line with what has been presented in previous years. As we are all aware, the city's growth has been unprecedented over the past 5 years. From 2016 to 2021, Thorold's population rapidly grew by 26.7%, which is over 5% per year, positioning us the 8th fastest growing municipality in the country. If we compare this to the preceding 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, we grew only 4.9%, which is less than 1% per annum. Our staffing resources, however, did not keep up with this growth, and this unfortunately hinders our ability to provide the level of customer service we wish to provide to our community. Staff understand that not all required positions can be included in one budget year, and it will take some time for our organization to catch up with the city's growth. As such, the senior management team worked together to prioritize departmental resources needs across the organization to include in the draft budget and for your consideration here this evening. The draft budget that we are going to discuss tonight is very similar to what was approved in past few years. It reflects a 3.24% net levy increase, which comprised of 1.3% infrastructure and 1.94% departmental. In comparison to last year, council passed a budget of 4.89%. As you are aware, the responsibility of transit has been shifted to the region as of January 1st. Last year, we budgeted $714,390 for transit services. This budget is removed from the city's levy this year and added to the regional tax levy. However, this shift in tax represents a reduction of city's 2023 levy of $714,390 or 3.75%. So considering this shift, there will be a net decrease of 0.51% on the city's tax levy as presented in the draft budget. This equates to an estimated 0.15% impact, as I said, on the city's portion on the bill for the average residential home valued at $269,500. The average home will see an $8 reduction on the city portion of their tax bill. As you know, the city's portion of the budget only represents 41% of the tax bill for an average residential home. Other portions such as the urban service area levy, the hospital levy, regional levies, and the educational levy constitute the other 59% of the tax bill. The overall tax levy impact will be determined after the region finalizes the tax ratio and tax rates. So, as per tonight's agenda, after my comments, Director of Finance, Ms. Maria Moro, will present the budget overview. Please know that each of our department heads are here with us tonight and will be able to provide answer to any questions that you may have. Following the presentation, we will go to departmental operating budget. After that, should there be any items on the deferred list you wish to bring forward, please do so at that time. After the operating budget, we'll go to the capital budget for council deliberation. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all staff involved with the preparation of this budget. As always, a special thank to Ms. Moro for all the work she and her team has done in assembling the overall budget package that is in front of you. At this time, I'll pass it on to Ms. Moro to get started on the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj, and I'll turn it over to our Director of Finance, Maria Morrow. And Maria Morrow, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, everyone, to Budget 2023. The city issues tax bills, which encompass not only the city taxes, but the regional and education taxes, as well as the urban service area and the hospital levy. For 2022, the city general budget taxes represented about 41% of the total bills across all property classes, with the bulk of the taxes being regional and education. The city has 4 budgets: the general operating budget and the capital budget, which form part of this package, along with the water and urban service area, which is sanitary, sewer, and sidewalk budgets. The latter ones will be discussed later this quarter as separate budgets. With new construction and development, new infrastructure is required. The new construction brings in more people, be it residents, tourists, or employees. This increase in infrastructure and people will increase the demands for service, which will in turn increase our operating expenditures. This demand for service starts in the planning department and then moves to the building department as the developments occur. This then filters down and requires increases to all departments to service the established developments. For example, snow plowing, grass cutting, water and sewer, roads, street light hydro, maintenance, bylaw services, fire services, grass cutting, capital renewal provisions and maintenance, billing and administrative functions. It should be remembered that growth dollars may be received up front, and then once critical mass is achieved, then additional costs for staffing and equipment must be incurred. Our growth over the past number of years has been significant, with a 27% increase in population from 2016 to 2021, and a 24% growth in weighted assessment from 2019 to 2023. For funding, there is an interrelationship between all the various sources, in that a reduction in one area must be funded from the other areas, and this normally falls onto property taxes. This shows the funding options for both capital and operational expenses. Some of the items, for example, grants, are beyond our control, so we need to consider the other areas which we can control so that the burden is not totally loaded onto property taxes. While reserve funding for operating expenses does occur, it is a very short-sighted move and really isn't a best practice, as it is not sustainable. This chart depicts a comparison of the average taxes across the region by home type for 2022. You will note that Thorold is below the regional average for all of these home types. To provide some reference indicators, a 1% net levy change equates to about $190,500, and a 1% levy change equates to about $16 to the average residential home valued at $269,500. The net levy budget as presented amounts to $20.2 million, with transportation, including winter control, along with fire expenses amounting to roughly 46% of the total gross expenditures. The package provides information on the specific impacts by department, but I'd like to provide you with a global summary of some of the major impacts. Salaries, benefit, and honoraria costs represent 46.5% of the expenditures in the draft operating budget. Increases to wages and benefits for existing approved staffing to cover contractual increases, step increases, annualization costs, changes to OMERS and new OMERS legislation for non-full-time employees, statutory and health benefits, along with the elimination of positions approved in previous budgets, and funding from the building reserve are forecast to increase by $488,000. With growth and legislative impacts, we see requirements for new positions totaling $1,675,000, with some of these funded from non-levy sources such as building permits and water and sewer. Overall, the impact from wages and benefits is $1.76 million. The next impact I'd like to highlight is asset renewal. This chart demonstrates how we are progressing in the ability to sustain our non-water and sewer assets. Please note that these are annual estimated totals. The green bar is the current budget provision. The yellow bar is the amortization expense based on historical costs, and the red bar is where we need to be on an annual basis to maintain our assets based on their replacement costs. Our asset management plan for core infrastructure is complete, with our asset management plan for non-core infrastructure currently underway. This is expected to negatively impact our funding shortfall even further. You'll see that we need an additional $8.2 million per year to fully fund our assets. You can see we're not funding sufficiently in any category. Sustaining our assets is an area that we must continue to address, not just from a best practice goal, but also from a provincially mandated obligation. Asset renewal funding ensures that we're able to proceed to repair and replace assets in a timely fashion without a significant impact to the levy. To address the shortfall, a 15-year phase-in plan has been adopted with 13 years remaining. We have included the full phase-in for 2023 with assistance from the Hydro Reserve to mitigate the levy impact. Again, we should anticipate increased requirements in future years once we have a complete picture on the non-core assets from our asset management plan currently underway. In addition, impacts from inflation and the assumption of assets in new subdivisions will increase the shortfall and funding requirements. The net impact for this infrastructure is $468,000. We have a number of replacement and additions to our fleet and equipment, with most of the funding coming from development charges and the general equipment reserve. Other capital funding requirements from the levy represent a change of $58,000. In total, this impacts our levy by $293,000. We will see an impact from the Canada Summer Games. The 2022 numbers were based on the PwC pro forma estimates. Based on the 2023 budget approved by the consortium partners, we anticipate a reduction in the net operating expenses for activities handled by the independent operator. We do, however, anticipate increases for property insurance, which is a consortium responsibility, and with unsold ice and subsidy, along with life cycle costing. As explained previously, we are presently in discussion with the group on how unsold ice will be handled, both from a booking to apportionment of revenues when the unsold ice is sold, along with a review of the life cycle costing. These are consortium decisions, not city decisions alone, and remain to be determined. The impact here is $183,000. We provide a grant to the library for which they've requested an increase of $29,000 or 4.1%. In addition, the budget includes provisions for increases in the Community Improvement Plan grants, specifically the tax increment grant. We expect a change net of reserve of $6,350, and this represents a total rebate of $217,000. Additionally, the community grants funding envelope has been increased slightly by $800. However, the funding from reserves is eliminated. The net impact here is $80,700. A request has been received for additional works, services, and events at Melswart Park, with a net impact to the levy of $44,000. Two city-run events are included in the budget. The first is the Santa Claus Parade, with a total expenditure envelope of $50,800, which represents an increase of $31,700. The Canada Day two-day event, with a total budget of $70,700, is included, with a projected increase of $20,000 in sponsorships and grants, and a reduction to reserve funding of $52,000. The net increase here is $30,000 for a net levy impact of $62,500. Number of other expenditures will see changes in the budgetary levels required, such as insurance, cemetery trailer rental, materials and supplies, and tax write-off provisions. The levy impact is a net increase of $114,000. Contracted services for repairs and maintenance, software and hardware annual fees, training and membership fees, and other will impact the levy by $101,000. Fee and fine related revenues, particularly in the Development Services Department, are forecast to increase by $549,000 and will partially subsidize the increase in staffing costs in this department. Investment income revenues are budgeted to increase by $740,000 thanks to the current interest rate environment, along with internally financed projects. While beneficial for this year, it does pose a risk to current and future years if and when interest rates decline. Building permit revenues are also forecast to increase significantly. However, this is legislated to only cover building-related expenses, with any surplus going to the building reserve and not to the general levy. Other revenues are expected to decline, namely the OMPF grant, the St. Lawrence Seaway contribution to the old cemetery, the POA revenues, and tax and interest penalty. The net benefit to the levy from this is $676,000. The region assumes responsibility for operation of transit services effective January 1st. This results in a reduction to the city levy and an increase to the regional transit levy. The cost removed from our levy and transferred is $714,000 roughly. This budget acknowledges the tax room shift to the region and does not attempt to replace the costs. The report includes listings which total $12.7 million in reductions and deferrals that have been used to reduce the levy impact. Roughly $1.3 million in staffing costs with either deferred start dates and or positions deferred entirely pending the results of the organizational review. The presence of any item on this list does not mean that staff are supportive of the reductions or that the items are not needed, merely that the overriding factor was levy impact. There is also roughly $5.9 million, that has been deferred for St. David's Phase 2, which is Foley to Ormond, and that was deferred due to the fact that Collier to Foley is proceeding in 2023, and this part of St. David's will be brought forward in 2024. The draft operating budget as presented reflects a 1.8% gross departmental decrease with a 1.3% infrastructure levy increase after growth of 6.73% and a transit transfer to the region of 3.75%. The total levy decrease is 0.51%, but excluding the transit transfer, our net levy change is 3.24%. For the summary, the residential class, the average home will see an $8 decrease from the city's general budget. This represents a 0.5% decrease to the overall tax bill. We have yet to see final numbers for the region general budget, regional transit, along with the tax rate policy, which is all under region's control. Total capital budget for new capital works is roughly $10 million, with 58% related to core infrastructure. There are carry-forward projects valued at $36 million for a total project slate of $46 million. The major new projects are Broderick Avenue from west to Westmount, vehicles, and legislated upgrades to the Salt and Sand Dome. The carry-forward major projects are the Fire Station number 1 and the Operations Center. Over the next 10 years, we estimate capital projects of $146 million. It should be noted that this is merely a forecast and not a firm commitment on the timing of projects. Council prioritizes projects on an annual basis. The asset management plan for non-core infrastructure is also presently underway, and this may impact upon the 10-year forecast and our project requirements. The report also identifies that total capital funding gap that the city faces over the next 10 years is estimated at $44.5 million, which will require the need to issue debt and incur debt servicing costs in our annual budgets, less any grants or fundraising that we are able to garner. We need to remain cognizant of this today as projects are approved, as this may impact on our ability to proceed in the future. We need to ensure that as we prioritize projects and make decisions that we take a long-term view. The city is presently very well positioned from an external standpoint, with only $575,000 outstanding projected at the end of 2022. This relates entirely to City Hall, and this will be fully paid off in 2026. In addition, we have financed a number of capital projects internally from reserve cash balances, with payback over a number of years totaling $8.7 million to the end of 2022. This number will grow as the Operations Center and the Fire Station construction projects continue to completion by approximately another $10 million. Lastly, the city in 2011 committed $5.7 million towards the new hospital. We levy $298,000 per year as a separate levy on the tax bill, and this will be there until 2026. This chart depicts our reserve position excluding hydro. While we estimate combined available balances of $68 million, in reality, the bulk of the holdings are in development charges, water and sewer, restricted or legislated reserve funds. Available balances for general operating and capital are estimated at $11.9 million. The target for these is $18.2 million. So we are underfunded in our reserve levels, and staff would caution against depleting reserves even further. Reserve erosion may solve an issue in the current year, but will negatively impact on future budgets. For hydro, the projected interest is $560,000, with the utilization proposed for 2023 directed to debt servicing City Hall, capital asset transportation, and capital asset general provisions. The support to the levy is 2.7%, and it should be noted that since 2001, capital budget support from the hydro interest has been over $12 million. We do have a number of risks and opportunities that may lead to positive or negative variances to the 2023 result that we need to be cognizant of. These being the revenue and expense projections, any in-year overruns or emergencies, which can lead to negative variances, new grant programs requiring municipal contributions, and general revenue expenditures that can be higher or lower than budget. Staff would respectfully suggest that it is the budget that establishes the service levels, and that in-year overruns and adjustments should be limited to emergencies, uncontrolled items, or grant programs, and not to introduce new programs, projects, or services. This is a suggested process that has worked well in the past. Council is able to ask any questions or bring forward any item in each section. Any changes to the draft budget are voted on by council as you go through the sections. These items can be reconsidered at the end of the budget process immediately prior to final adoption of the budget. This ensures that we differentiate between general discussion and changes, which are formalized and recorded in the minutes. And that concludes my overview, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions on the presentation.
Sorry. Thank you for your presentation, and I'll open the floor for questions until we move into the operating budget. I see Councillor Hanley with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Maria. First question, in regards to the increase for the library, will we know if the increase is due to wages or is it due to service increase? I know, because they asked for 4.1% increase, I believe it was.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you look at page 179, it does detail where they're looking for increases, and you can see that part of it is wages and benefits. There seems to be some reductions in certain areas as well. Books, increase in audit fees and supplies. So it really is a combination of items.
Okay, thank you, because I knowing that, you know, a lot of people are using now services outside the library board themselves. So considering that increase, if I could ask in regard to the library board, are we considering or we have anything in place if at a time, if it does happen, we agree to an addition to the library services as far as building construction? I know they've made a proposal. They seem to be out there fundraising.
Through Mr. Mayor,
Mayor,
presently this budget does not include any funding for expansion.
And can I ask you then, do we have any, I know I haven't seen it, but is there anything that may come forward to be considered in the future for 2024 budget? Do you know at this time? Has the library brought anything forward solidifying their request?
I've not seen anything formal. I know that they are looking at fundraising opportunities and feasibility at this point.
Okay, I only ask because, you know, to move forward, I know that some councilors in the past have had ideas about maybe we could move it to the arena or move it here. So I'm just wanting to assure that we're not moving in a direction on one specific site. In regards to the Mal Swart fundraising, I know that they're looking for a peace cemetery there. Funding so far is now, is there anything in place? I know when it was brought forward, they were going to go out and try to solicit fundraising. That's still part of it, or have they meet their maximum? Because I know Fred had mentioned that he could reach out to the First Nations or to the natives when it was brought forward. I know that was brought forward because when it was first presented, it was almost made out to be that it could be a fully funded project from outside city sources. Has there been any contact with them, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I've not been provided with information. I was asked to include this amount, and I don't know that there is fundraising. I'm not sure if any other staff member has any other information they could shed.
One other one. I know that the region hasn't set a budget increase yet, or have they? Did I see something where they're looking to increase their budget at the region of 9.3%?
The region has not finished finalized their budget. We've done a lot of the water, wastewater, the ABCs, stuff like that, but the operating budget is a week tomorrow. And you're right, they're right now starting the operating or putting it together. They're at 9.4%.
Okay, could I ask you, Mr. Mayor, to Director of Finance, if it was to come through at a 9.4% increase at the region, would we know what impact that would have on our levy? I know I'm putting you in this
Through
spot.
Mr. Mayor, you know what, it has no impact on our levy. It has an impact on the tax bill.
Tax bill, I mean, on the tax bill, yes. So if I want to, I know that we're in process, so we might be prematurely passing a budget, you know, if we were to do it tonight or whatever, not knowing what the impact will be on the residents once the region comes through, so that's why I want to ask that.
Fair question, Councillor.
Through Mr. Mayor, and these are very rough numbers. I would say between 5 and 6% increase overall.
One last thing, Maria, I know it's always been a thing, we've always done a shortfall on the monies we need for capital reserves. And we've been underfunding them for years. And it's based on, are we now at a point, if I understand, we're at a shortfall of $8.2 million per year? And if so, what will we need to contribute to that over a term of 20 years to get to where we need to be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we were able this year to actually meet our target. When they did we did the core infrastructure, and they looked at a 15-year phase, and so kind of 3 years in, so we're at year 13. We are looking at the non-core assets to be done right now. Probably that will come forward, you know, in the second quarter of 2023, so we know what we're looking at this point. You know, 468,000 pending any changes from the non-core should do it per year. Unfortunately, the problem becomes when you assume new subdivisions, your asset base and the assets that you need to replace will increase along with inflation. And for the non-residential construction, the inflation is double digits. So it does impact us. So at this point, in today's dollars, 468 per year for 13 years, but guaranteed that's not enough.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Do we have a copy of the presentation? Is it on our e-scribe?
It's on your e-scribe. It's not?
No, we'll provide you with a copy.
Can we get that email to all the council?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could we get a hard copy right now? Because I have some jotted questions, but I'd like to go back to some of the slides. But without the slides in front of me, it's hard for me to make reference to them.
We could, if you know, maybe a Director of Finance can put the presentation up.
Yeah, just for future, for myself, Mr. Mayor, I would like printed copies of any staff presentations before the council meeting here, so that I have something to jot my notes down.
You should ask the appropriate staff for that before the meeting. Otherwise, it will be on. It'll be on here, or you can ask for it. They'll definitely supply it for you if you want.
Okay, thank you. In the future, I will. I'm going to hold my questions right now. Others may be prepared.
Yeah,
I have
not a problem. Anyone else for questions? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you very much for the presentation, Ms. Morrow. Just to follow up on Councillor Handley's question about the capital shortfall. So Are we looking at then an approximate 2% levy increase over the next 13 years if we wanted to fund it at the levels that would fulfill or meet the shortfall? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, at a minimum.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Councillor O'Hare? That's it? Anyone else, questions? Go ahead, Councillor Sentence.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to wait for Council Hanley to get back. We actually had a library meeting tonight, and they're going to be applying for that green initiative grant. That's what they're hoping to do, and the $29,000 they told me basically is for programming because they need another programmer because they've grown in programming and for wages. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that information. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Neon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just trying to stick to some questions here on the slide presentation. And because I'm new on council, I haven't been here for a few years, I just have a few questions. Like the Santa Claus Parade, which is on page 17 or slide 17, it increased by $32,000. Now, it went up, it's up to $50,000 now. Is that, and I know we had issues with COVID, is the $50,000 like a pre-COVID amount? Are we just bringing it back to originally where it was? Because I know it was canceled for a few years, and now it was a great event. I'm not knocking it here at all, but I'm just wondering, is that bringing us back to what it was before, or is this addition? And if it's addition, what's causing the large increase? If I could have some clarity on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, it's not bringing it back to, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not bringing it back to current levels. At one point, this was done by volunteers, and the city contribution was about $19,000. Starting last year, the decision was made that it would be a city-run event, and that's what's added the cost to it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just can you elaborate maybe, because it's a city-run event, what additional costs would they, is it staff time, is it equipment, is it maybe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can attempt, but perhaps someone from Community Services can answer the question. Yes, a lot of it is staff time.
Okay. Like I guess, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I saw it I saw the amount in our budget book, but there's no breakdown that sort of allocates the $50,800 in our budget book. Is there like a breakdown of what the budget's made up, staff time, parade costs, whatever the costs are, right? So it gives a better indication of where the funds are being spent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if you would be happy to bring a more detailed
Sure. Yeah.
account of where the costs are. Some of them are associated with, promotions and contract, but as the Director of Finance said, the majority of it is the staff cost time associated with planning and programming the event.
Okay. I'm fine with that, Mr. Mayor, if something could be brought back, because we're going to have another budget meeting anyway. So again, can we also do that so it saves me questions with the Canada Day? Very similar, if we could have a breakdown there, because the Canada Day is up to $70,700, and maybe if you could put what it's been spent on in the past couple of years, so we could see how it's relative to what was spent in the past.
Okay.
I'm sort of, Mr. Mayor, just sticking to my questions to the presentation right now. The other one I had was regarding the Canada Summer Games, slide 14. The life cycle renewal of $414,000. So this is a cost, I would assume that'll go on every year. Can someone indicate how long that's going to last?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, forever.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I can elaborate, as part of the consortium agreement, there's a 1.5% requirement to fund towards life cycle.
Okay. So I'm assuming that this is based on an amortization schedule. That's where the 414 comes from. It jumped quite a bit from the previous year of 281. Are we using the same formula for the remaining assets the city has? Our current rink, do we do the same thing as a life cycle, put that money aside also?
Through Mr. Mayor, as one of the slides indicated, we are $8.2 million per year in shortfall for life cycle costing for the city assets. So no, we don't do, unfortunately, the same thing for the city.
Okay, so this is an anomaly that this is the only one that we do the life cycle costing. Okay. Question on page number 18. This is regarding other expenditures. We have a cemetery trailer rental. I know last count, it's either the last one or the previous one, we had talked about the cemetery and bringing some information back so that we can move forward with looking at refurbishing the building so that we could house staff there. Is a cemetery rental part of that process? Because I know there's a rental out there now. It's not fully utilized because it doesn't have the amenities to be a year-round office building. Is this what we're talking about when we're talking about cemetery trailer rental? And is this something that will disappear if we move forward with a different direction in remediating the building and moving that forward to get staff back out there? If I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, have a little bit
Yep,
more
go ahead,
clarity on
and
that.
I'll ask Jeff to answer that question.
Yeah, so the trailer that's on the site now is costing us, I think, $6,000 a month. This is an annual expense for a cemetery trailer office, a proper facility that would have washrooms and 2 office locations inside. We will likely need to have this in place if we want to maintain that level of service for a period of 1 year. So on the meeting of February 7th, we'll be bringing back a report, or hope to bring back a report to you that talks about what the design fees and what it would cost to get us to the point of a Class B cost estimate, at which time we can make a decision about moving ahead with the renovations to the administration site. However, the renovation will take about a year to complete. So at least in my mind, the rental of the cemetery trailer, if we want to have staff out there, is going to be an unavoidable expense for this year.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, just to follow up that. So then, this is a different trailer than that's out at the cemetery right now. It'll be an enhanced trailer that'll have the services, so staff can stay there for the full year, including the winter months. I just want clarity on that.
Yes, it's a different trailer. Yeah,
it's a different trailer?
More formal office where we can conduct business properly, yes.
Okay, thank you. That answers that one. Appreciate the answer. Maybe you can answer the one, Mr. Mayor, regarding transit. I know it's been uploaded to the region. Is there any discussions or thoughts in terms of charging the municipalities for services running through their community? Or once it's uploaded for good for them? They're going to be dealing with it. Because like I know in the past, Thorold used to pay for its own bus routes coming through our community.
It's uploaded with current services. If you want enhanced services, then the city can pay for it, and you can. My understanding, and Councillor Longo will be attending the meeting starting this month, that right now we're on existing service level. If you want enhanced services, that you're capable of getting that, but the municipality would have to pay for that.
Okay, I just want to make
That's
sure.
my understanding, but we'll get a more fulsome report back as Councillor Longo will be attending those meetings.
Okay, that's excellent. My concern, Mr. Mayor, though, is if we start using the uploaded funds that we gave or that we got because of the transit, then all of a sudden regional council makes a decision saying, okay, no, you got to pay for services going through your community. I don't want that coming back whacking us next year as a $750,000 negative going the other way. So as long as you could sort of reassure me right now that that's not the intent or where the direction they're going, because I'm sure they're not happy with the bill that they're getting from the transit. But that's another side. Okay, you gave me a little bit more confidence on that one. Just a quick question. I pretty well know, I think I know where the answer is coming from. It's just on slide 25. It talks about the average residential home. This would be coming from MPAC. I just find it hard to believe that the average home is $269,500. That means there's homes lower than that and homes higher than that. I just...
Through Mr. Mayor, the MPAC has not done the reassessments.
Okay.
So that's why there were a number of reassessments that were to be done. So these, I believe, are 2016 values.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's so low.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense then. Thank you, Ms. Morrow. Appreciate that. The other question I have is on page 30. It talks about the hydro interest reserve. It mentions levy support of 2.7. So the interest this year is supporting our levy by 2.7. Is this consistent in prior years, or have we added more levy costs to the hydro interest because the hydro interest is going up?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we actually had to scale down for a number of years because the interest just wasn't there, but we do traditionally try to keep it in this level.
Okay. My concern, as you mentioned, Ms. Morrow, that if the interest rates go down again, then we're going to be hit with a tax increase automatically. I'd like to see more of the hydro interest go to capital projects or one-time costs, so then that way it's only a hit on the budget this year, and then it doesn't impact us in the next year if the interest rate.
The Director of Finance wants to comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that change was made a number of years ago. It can only go to towards capital funding. So if you look at City Hall debt servicing, it's the capital asset transportation contribution and capital asset general. So to a certain degree, if the hydro interest does go down, then we're forced to reduce the contributions to the capital asset reserves, which is what we did for the previous 2 years. So there's nothing of the hydro interest that goes to general pure levy operational support.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's excellent to hear that. So I guess if the interest goes down, then the capital asset transportation would go down. Hence, the levy would have to take the impact if that were the case. Seeing nodding yes, that's good. Clarity. I think that's it for right now, Mr. Mayor. If other councillors have some questions, I may come back with a few more.
Is there any more questions before we go on to operating? Go ahead, Councillor Long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the Director of Finance. Our asset renewal is underfunded by about $8.2 million, you mentioned. I'm just curious, I know all municipalities struggle with this. How are we doing compared to our peers on that one? You know?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're right. It is a general problem with most municipalities. I don't really have the information in terms of, are we better or worse than some of the others. I'll see if I can find it for the next budget meeting. It's generally not necessarily out there like this, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just thought maybe you spoke with your peers, and I know it is a struggle, but I know we're doing the best we can. And my final question, it's regarding staff deferred start dates. I look at that as putting new staff in place, starting them halfway through the year, having a budget impact for, let's say, a 6-month period, but then it catches up to us next year. Am I thinking the right way with this? And how do we make sure we are prepared, if that's the case, to offset it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what happens. We have quite a number of staff positions that are required, and our overall goal sometimes is to mitigate the levy impact. So it does save you this year, but for next year there is an impact for the deferrals when you have the annualization, and with this level of positions, the impact will be significant. It'll be a couple of points.
Great, so, through you, Mr. Mayor, so as we move on, would you be able to give us a better idea, as we get closer to the end of this process, how that could affect us next year?
Certainly, I can tell you how it will affect you based on what's in the budget.
Yeah. Okay,
And then if
thank you.
there's any changes, we can make the change.
Great, thank you. Very nice presentation, very good.
Thank you. Are there any further questions before we move on? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, if we could just take a quick look at page 28, I'm wondering about the Port Robinson transport service listed at 129,000. Does that include just covering the service of the ferry, or does that also include some of the repairs that are going
Well,
to be
wait,
needed?
that's under operating budget when we get there.
Okay, all right,
This is just questions on the presentation from our
okay,
director.
all right, thank
But
you.
you can certainly ask those questions in the correct time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else before we move on? Okay. So as per past year, we'll start with the operating budget, then we'll go to deferrals, and then we'll move to the capital budget. So we will start with operating budget, and that is starting on page 16. So if anybody has anything they want to raise or questions to ask, by all means, staff is here, and we'll proceed as such. Go ahead, Counselor. Counselor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I know that we're looking at doing an organization review within the city, and I believe that some of these positions can carry over. I can talk in general on them.
Sure you can. Go ahead.
So I know that the proposed fire chief, July 1st start date, if I could ask, that be set over until we have an organization review. I'll go through them all. Fire prevention officer, I know that that's already something that we're committed for as a municipality. I believe, right? That's something that we can't defer, that if I
That
can
was
through you.
last year's budget, actually.
That's right, we can't defer it. So that's something that's part of we made a letter of understanding, you might say, that was a position that we were going to incorporate. In regards, if I can through you, Mr. Mayor, the appropriate thing, now I know they have a proposed senior planner, proposed intermediate planner. Are they the two positions that the city's currently advertising to fulfill
I'll ask Jason.
in the
to
planning department?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's only one position that's currently being advertised, but none of the positions in the budget are that position.
So again, myself personally, I would ask that, I know that we're growing exponentially, there's no doubt about it, but I'm asking that, I'm just saying it's not that it's going forward, but my suggestion would be that we hold that over until an organization review, if that's what council's wishes are. I know it's in the budget. As far as the bylaw enforcement officer and all the positions there, I know that we talked in regards to previously, and I'd mentioned in regards to bringing a report forward. If I could ask you, Mr. Mayor, to Jason. Jason, I know we talked to maybe changing the parking strategy and the enforcement in the city. Is the report coming forward, or when it may do, in our discussions, or is this a position in regards to, do we need all four? Let's say, I see you got four. Can we do with one in regards to parking enforcement? And we delay the others until we do an organization review. For example, I'm asking you through the mayor, say we do the January 1st start date for a bylaw enforcement officer, and we delay the other three, the residential licensing clerk, the enforcement officer, until the supervisor, until we do an organization review. Could that get us through would help?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanley, there are two parking enforcement officers proposed in the budget. Those positions are necessary to really provide that service. The licensing clerk is intended to be funded completely by the fees of the residential rental licensing applications. So that would not have an impact on the budget, or wouldn't have an impact on the levy. And the fourth position in bylaw division that you're referring to would be a supervisor for the bylaw division, as they don't currently have any form of management or supervision on a full-time regular basis.
Okay, thank you on that, Barry. Just that I know that we had talked in the past about having so on that one, you know, the supervisor one, and myself personally, and in regards to the one bylaw enforcement officer, if you know, I'm going to ask that we can defer that. I'll wait for council decision. That's another one. I'd be susceptible of the park enforcement officer starting on the January 1st date, because the clerk. And the clerk also on the April 1st date, I'd be good for seeing that. It's looking that would, if I understand correctly, would be a revenue neutral and paid through the licensing fees that we incur. If I could go through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it could be maybe possibly the Jason Tour or Jeff, the 2 additional crossing guards for 2022 approval. Would one of them be for the crossing, the new crossing intersection that we had on Richmond Street? And the other one would be for an intersection undetermined or Tupper. So that would be the 2 there. So that's 2 that currently, then if I understand correctly, we're actually taking resources away, Mr. Mayor, from our operations department, and they're doing it presently, right? We've had that. I know that I've gone by and I've seen. So I'm looking at their 2 positions that I would be acceptable to receiving at this time. In regards to proposed engineering technician on the April 1st start, can I ask for you, Mr. Mayor, to the appropriate staff member, in regards to an engineering technician, why is it that we need a proposed engineering technician, and do we presently not have one?
Who wants to answer that, Jeff or Steve?
Mr. Mayor, the request for the additional engineering technician is to keep up with the volume of work related to development, but primarily this person would be assigned to some of the capital projects that are currently need to have some legwork, investigation, preliminary engineering work done for projects that are in our capital forecast.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley, we can go through these one by one if you want, but I know that the staff put these on the list because they feel they're deemed necessary, but council can make a decision. But if we're going to go through every job, we better do it individually, because I'm not going back at the end.
Okay, well, the only reason I'm doing it is because I know that I put forward a proposal for an organization review of the jobs. So I may be stepping ahead of the gun here, you know, like, why have an organization review? We're just gonna hire everybody. So maybe we could bring in a professional and let us know what we really need, because as I mentioned before, a lot of times it's about wants, not needs, when you do it internally, because it's about people helping each other and not doing what's in the best interest of the community. That's the way I believe.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to Councillor Handley's comments, we are prepared to do this organization review, as you see that's in the budget. And this position that you see, there are a number of positions that staff is asking us. So if you look at, there is a number of positions that are in our deferred list as well. These positions that has been brought forward, if you were talking about planners, for example, you know that Bill 109, Bill 23 that are there. And if we don't have these positions in place, what has happened is that we have to return the money back to the developers, which we don't want to do it. Either we have the staff in-house to do it, otherwise we have to hire consultants to do that, and we'll be paying much more by hiring a consultant. Second thing, when you look at these planner position, let's talk about the planners first. If you have seen in presentation that Ms. Morrow presented, that there is an intent to increase revenue, substantial increase in planning revenue from the development fees, so that the impact on the levy is reduced from that standpoint. So that is the reason all these positions that you see, the senior planner, intermediate planner, and if you look at the intermediate planners as well, 50% of their salaries are also coming from building reserves too. So the intent of the position that has been put forward in the base budget has kept in view that, yes, we are going to do the organizational review, and we have a number of positions that are required, and we agree that we will get a third party to do the review, and they will talk about the needs and wants. But there are certain positions, as I just mentioned to you about the planner position, and our director of development services mentioned about some bylaw stuff, that are required, because by the time we finish our development organizational review, it will come up with the recommendations sometime later this year, and then we will have other positions as recommended by the external consultant that will be retained to do the assessment. That will come the following year. So the backlog or the requirements are significant that we have received from staff. And I just wanted to bring to council attention that the first draft that we have received, both the director of finance and myself from all department, the tune of the impact on tax levy would have been 24.5%. And we have brought it down from 24.5% to 3.25%, and making sure that the one that we have some justification from the department stays in the base budget, and others we have deferred, or we have actually not even included in the deferred budget. So I'm just saying is that the position that you see, and again, by all means, speak with the department heads. They will provide you with the rationale and why the positions are required. But ultimately, it's council decision whether to provide that positions to staff or not. But what I do understand, speaking with senior staff, that if some of these positions are not being provided, the level of service that we provide to our community that they expect from us will go down, because the resources are not there. So just to provide an overview on that, but certainly we do understand that we will do the organizational review, but some of these positions, we know that when we come out from the organizational review, these were the ones, some of them are legislated, some of them because of the change in the political environment and some of the changes that are being taken place, we have to do. So just want to put everybody, why we have done that. Thank you.
I thank you for that. I just don't want to, we hire an individual and then we have an organization review and he tells us, well, maybe you didn't need to hire an individual and now we're into a contract obligation and we're stuck with them. And an organization review in regards to if the person that's in the job is the person that's suitable for the position. So on that note, then, is the objective, well, I won't go on any further than that stuff. I'm just raising my concerns. That I don't believe that we maybe have to hire. That's why I'm asking the questions. What's important and what isn't important. What we can delay and what we can't.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I understand what Councillor Hanley is saying, but I can tell you when we were campaigning or talking to people, service levels and bylaw were the main objection or main problem for everybody that we didn't have. My fear would be waiting all year for a review and then not filling some of these positions. And I know they've knocked a lot of stuff off of these positions, so I would feel respectfully that this is a pretty fair look at what we have here, and I would be comfortable going forward with what staff has presented. I think it's a good budget. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just make a comment on the page. The city's gone through tremendous growth over the years, and we've deferred many of these positions. I look at this, and I think these are some really good positions to fill, ones that will affect our residents the most. I'm almost surprised we don't have a few more bylaw officers on this, but maybe we can look at that another year. But these are the things I think we need. Even our proposed 2 parks outside casuals for 30 weeks. Is that enough to make sure our parks are maintained properly? I hope it is, but I guess we'll see this year. Most of these I agree with, as Councillor Senton said. There's only one I'm going to question, and I guess I would need somebody to tell me why we need this position, and it would be the proposed Community Services Event Coordinator. We talked about 2 events, the Santa Claus Parade, Canada Day celebrations, which would cost in excess of $80,000 to run, and then we're going to have, it looks like about $100,000 salary position for this. So can somebody justify and let me know why we need this position?
Very good question, and I'll ask our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman, to answer that.
Mr. Mayor, the Special Event Coordinator position is something that's evolved as a result of decreasing reliability of available volunteers who have traditionally, before COVID, provided these services and took it upon themselves to arrange for acts, align contracts, and to prepare in advance for these significant events, fundraising, sponsorship, those types of things. That volunteer base is starting to dwindle, and as much as there are still members of the community that want to participate, they are not willing to take on the risks that are associated with some of the duties that they had been assigned in the past. And as a result, the responsibilities to make sure the insurance is in place, all the permits are fulfilled, and in alignment with all the other security issues, there needs to be a person that's going to coordinate that from the city's perspective. If it doesn't happen under the city's, with the city's oversight, then there are issues with insurance. So this is something that's emerged out of COVID. It's something that we used to, as I say, rely on volunteers, and everybody chips in and everybody helps. But we're at the stage now where we need to assign those duties to a particular person instead of relying on the extra efforts of some of the regulars who regularly contribute towards these events.
Go ahead, Councillor. Do you want to expand on that, or do you have any further questions?
I don't have any further questions. I'll just comment. I think it's quite a bit of money for 2 community events we hold. I'm sure we could probably come up with others, but at this point, it just seems to me that there may be a better way to do it. I don't know if we could outsource a company that would take this over. Again, I can support just about everything on this page. That one I struggle with.
Go ahead, before I go to Councillor Hanley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Longo, I understand that only 2 events at this point in time, but Council have in the past discussed to have a farmers market or have music festival in Battle of Beaver Dam Parks, and also talked about Victoria Day, fireworks. So the intent, my understanding from the department is that if we have a position there, all those other events that if council wanted to add to it, they can certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
I'll thank you. Just to comment on that, we at one time, the tourism department, before we got our current tourism division, actually coordinated the Canada Day facilities, the Italian festival, the Santa Claus Parade. Also, I remember when we hired Tessa to be the coordinator for the administrator assistant to the mayor and council, and also it was noted it would help with tourism. Also, we have a girl that works for the city, Stephanie, who's a program supervisor, and that was a job that was brought forward before when we had Mr. Rochers working for us. And basically, I believe we have the staff on board already. We have a program supervisor. A program supervisor, I believe, should be programs such as Canada Day celebrations, July 4th celebrations, Canada Day celebrations, Santa Claus celebrations. Again, when we hired the assistant to the mayor and council, part of that job classification was also tourism. And again, I'll mention, there was a time when the tourism department was actually a leading role in holding the Canada Day festivities, in holding the Santa Claus Parade, and holding the Italian Festival, and other events. So I was wanting to get to that, as part of my list. I didn't get a chance to get down there. But that
Okay.
was one of the things. So myself too, as Councillor Longo says, I echo his concerns, is that I believe we already have the in-house positions already there. We have a program supervisor. What programs are we really doing, to think about it? The TCAG takes care of mostly the recreational programs in the city. We have the Canada Games facility, we're already paying a consortium partner and an overseer of the project. We have a tourism department that we're paying for yearly. And myself personally, I don't believe we get the bang for the buck that we used to previously. We seldom hear from them. Probably any councils here, we haven't heard from some time,
Councillor
so.
Henley, our CEO wants to comment.
So just
on-
in that reference, I believe we have the already in-house capability of addressing the two events, and if I can, I just want to go on. And the farmer market, if you may remember, I brought a motion forward at last council. I haven't, and still to this day, I just talked to Councillor Didavitis the other day and told him I was going to take him out there to the lady. Small Scale Farms, she's recently taken over and bought Harvest Barn. The council may not know that. She's expanded her business significantly, and she's wanting and willing to help the city coordinate a farmer's market. And that's what we need to do. We need to look outside the box. We don't need to keep hiring these people for $70,000, $80,000. I believe that position, we have the capability within the municipality at this time to do it without having to hire an individual community service events coordinator. It's been on the books for the city for years.
Thank you. And you want to comment? Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Henley, you are right about the tourism. We had a service provider who was providing the services for the past several years. And when we talked to them this time, I think they were asking for more money. What we have done is, as you've seen the budget, and our manager of economic development is not here. He will be there at the next meeting. He can elaborate further on it. What we have done this year, we are bringing that in-house. So mayor's assistant, who is also role is part of tourism and our economic development, they are going to manage the tourism aspect internally as well. So we are not paying the external without any extra staffing we needs for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask you, Mr. Mayor, then through the appropriate, what impact would that have on the levy? What do we pay on for tourism in 2022?
So whatever we have paid in 2022, we are not increasing anything in 23. But if we would have continued the contract with the external agency, we would have to increase the levy. So we are taking it in-house and no impact to the levy. Thank you.
So we're no longer going to be hiring Venture Niagara, I believe that is?
No, but we'll still be hiring people to man a lot, like students and, different costs related to the tourism center.
So on that aspect, what was it, through you, Mr. Mayor, what was it that we paid Venture Niagara? So basically, we're not going to be paying Venture Niagara no more, so we paid them $80,000, $90,000. That $90,000 is going to be shifted over to this position?
Yeah, so there is no position here through you, Mr. Mayor. Everything is our mayor's and council assistant. She is, with the help of our economic development manager, are going to manage Log 7. What we have to do is, Venture Niagara was also hiring students to manage it. We are going to hire students ourselves. So we are not paying them to manage it because, of course, when you hire an external person or external agency, they, of course, will have profits and everything built into there. So what we are doing is we are going to hire students to manage that internally, and we were going to manage it internally ourselves.
Okay, if I can ask you through, Mr. Mayor, then one more question.
Yeah.
Then therefore, what is the program supervisor's job description for the city of Thorold? We have a program supervisor, I believe, that we're paying. What is she supervising? What programs? I believe, do we not have a lady that's classified as a program supervisor in the city? Do you, the appropriate staff member?
For you, Mr. Mayor, our job description says that she is responsible for the supervision, scheduling, preparedness of recreational amenities and services with the Community Services Department. This is including but not limited to pools, parks, playgrounds, recreational facilities, and sports fields. The program supervisor from Community Services also acts as a liaison with external sports clubs and other community groups. Their job is to act as liaison, not necessarily to organize these special events. Now, appreciate the context here about, at the time we were putting the staffing request together, there was an anticipation of a number of events that we were going to be sponsoring by the city. Victoria Day was one request that came from council. We weren't sure about Canada Day. Was it 1 day or 3-day event? There were some other plans for community gardens, other plans for the farmers market, which haven't made the budget here. So I can understand that it looks like a little bit of overkill based on the events that will eventually get approved. However, there are a number of events that come from various groups and committees that are city sanctioned, but not necessarily city run. And they need to have some coordination with city staff and equipment and resources. And there needs to be somebody sort of designated to do that work. So I understand the reason why this may look like overkill at the moment, but the council should be aware that there is a trend here that is, the expectation from the community is that these events are going to go off with a hitch, and that some of these duties that have traditionally relied or been performed by volunteers is now being pushed towards staff.
Okay, I appreciate it. My concern is, I think I made my point. We've hired a program supervisor. We hired a lady to be an assistant to staff. And I agree with Councillor Longo, like, if there's one position, this is the position. We've hired individuals in the past to help coordinate that.
Thank you.
I'm finished with that. That's my only concern through any more jobs.
Thank you. Councillor Sentence, and then I have Councillor DeRose after that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question on this job to Mr. Holman. So how I'm trying to wrap my head around it too, it does stand out a little bit, but if we're going to run all these programs, run them without it going off, my question is, would this position also help with the tourism department? Would they help with, Dave and Stephanie down with all their jobs? Would they be more of an encompassing person to help them, not just with events, but to help them when they're organizing other things? Or is this just a standalone events coordinator?
Yeah, so the intent here, Mr. Mayor, is that we're able to work as a team. So if, for example, we need additional support at Lock 7 because one of the students have called in sick, we could reallocate somebody from the pool, or we could reallocate somebody from some of the other community services operations side of things. It's new for us, so I can't really give you a clear and confident answer. However, we know that we're not going to be able to close down Lock 7 Tourism Center if somebody calls in sick, that there's an expectation that there's a level of service that is provided there, and someone's going to need to coordinate that and prioritize their staffing on a regular basis, not just during the summer months, but in the shoulder seasons when students aren't available, and how are we going to provide that service into late September and October when the students have gone back to school?
Okay, thank you. I think I can justify that job if it was going to be part of those other jobs as well, but that's just my comment. Thank you.
I had Councillor DeRose. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree 100% with what Councillor Longo and Hanley described. This jumped out at me also. So far, we really have made 2 major events which have been up to 120,000 budget-wise, and we're going to pay someone $100,000 to manage 2 events that are about 120,000. It just doesn't make sense to me. Councillor Hanley had some good points. We've hired a handful of people. I thought Canada Day went smoothly last year, and they ran it, and Santa Claus Parade was run by the city, took it over. I thought it was run smoothly. I didn't think we had a lot of content there, but yeah. So I can't justify this position at this point. We can always contract it out. I'd rather do that for even if you have 5 events, 6 events, contract it out, 5,000 each, and there's your 30,000. We're not worried about. I'm worried about next year. What's going to happen with some of these that are starting later, the impact on the budget. So that's just my comment on it. I just wanted to ask, I got two more questions, but just to the fire chief, can I just get a justification of proposed deputy fire chief?
Well,
Because
can we stick with this
Oh,
position for
okay,
now? But
I'm sorry.
I'll go back to you and
Yeah,
you'll
okay.
get ample
But
time to ask
in-
those questions. The only reason is we've been focused on that, so I'd like to
Sorry.
keep the
Yep,
conversation.
okay,
on that.
and can I just make a comment or ask a question? For next year's budget, is there any way when we have a hire to have a short justifications? I know it's gonna be too expensive to do a cost benefit. If we were a company for profit, you'd do a cost benefit analysis of each position. And I know, we don't have the resources to do that. So sometimes we just gotta use common sense and focused observation, and it's a great budget, so from what I've seen so far. But just a couple of things. But is there any way we can have, like, each time you're adding a worker to have a justification next to it? Why is it needed? Because we're taking your word for it, but we're also trying to alleviate taxpayers' costs, because as we know, everything's getting more expensive. So yeah.
Okay.
So I am against at this point, the proposed community service events coordinator. It looks like the market and the Victoria Day are put on deferrals anyway. So, and
Okay, Councilor
my-
DeRosa, and
that's my
we'll
take,
go
Mr.
back
Mayor.
to you
Thank you.
on the other questions.
Yeah.
You'll have an ample opportunity to ask those
Thank you.
questions. I've got Councilor Daviditis, and then I've got Councilor Decker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I understand my council members, what they don't like about the event coordinator. But having done major events, Grape and Wine, all kinds of different events I've been through, people like to deal with one person, not deal with a bunch of different people, a consistent face. And some of these events, it takes so many hours to do. No volunteer is going to do it, and not done right. So if you want to go forward and develop more and more events in the community, we have to bite the bullet and have someone do this job. And if you want to deal with agents and promoters and people, sound companies and tank companies, they don't want to talk to a million different people. They want one voice, one guy. No one likes when one person says, do this, then another person says, do that. Well, I spoke to this person, I spoke to this person. I'm a volunteer. That doesn't work. And from my experience, and I've done large events, Grape and Wine, in St. Catharines, from a budget from $5,000 to $250,000, you need one person. So if we want to develop something in Thorold, we need to hire somebody.
Thank you, Councilor Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Dedevitis. I totally agree with you. I know the issues we ran into when we were running the Santa Claus Parade, especially with insurance issues and the applications that needed to fill out, and we couldn't get enough volunteers. Perhaps maybe we can look at the position and combining it as an assistant to the person that we have now, so that perhaps the salary isn't as high, and this assistant can help in the coordination of these events. And I know that we do have quite a few events coming up with our 50-year celebration, Earth Day, tree planting, etc. So I like the idea of the position. Maybe we could look at having it more as an assistant position. And I just wanted to get some clarification for Canada Day. It didn't really cost the city over $70,000 because we did raise over $20,000 of.
It was more than 20 last year because we got
Yeah.
a grant. Yeah.
We actually, I want to use the right word, we received funds to go towards the Canada Day celebration from people in our community. So it did not cost the city of Thorold the $72,000. So I just wanted to clarify that to make sure that people didn't think it did really cost us $72,000.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Anyone else on that position? Go ahead, Councilor D'Angelo.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot of good points brought out by all the councillors that spoke on. I agree we have to move in a direction where we give those groups some assistance. I'm not at a full position where we should hire someone 100% at that cost. It's like any business, you got to grow it. So I'd rather see someone contracted out on a specific projects. They could be an assistant, they could have a contact person with the city. I think that's the step, and then I'd like to try that a year as a pilot. As we have new programs or new events that are coming online, then we could see it grow. And it can grow into a position if it's done properly. I don't want to just jump into the position and then say, okay, we'll go find events, because with every event that you have, now you have a person there that wants to do it, but there's going to be additional costs, right? And hiring another assistant just not only comes with financial costs for the employment, but then you need a computer, a vehicle, and the list goes on. An office space, like I don't even know if we have enough room at this city hall for another office to put an assistant in. So these are things that have to be considered when we're doing this. So I would rather see us go with some sort of contract spot on project-based. And sometimes when you bring someone in that has the talents to do this, their connections are far better than bringing a new person in there that may not be connected to Thorold and not have the proper contacts. You know, Santa Claus Parade is a good example. Someone runs a Santa Claus Parade who's been involved with that, and you're paying them. They would know what bands to get, which bands they could get reasonably, when to line them up, all that sort of logistics, so it doesn't fall onto a volunteer and say, hey, we missed the deadline to get this person. So that's where I'd like to see that position go, as more as a contract position right now, which is event-based. If it leads into assistance, if it leads into doing other work for other departments, that's a little different. And the question I had is, I know the two budgets have gone up for the Santa Claus Parade and for the Canada Day celebrations. Like those costs, and it was mentioned in there that there's staffing costs. Is this position part of that budget, or is this on top of that budget?
My guess is it's on top. Am I right when I say that? This is an addition, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, yeah.
So if this person's, Mr. Mayor, just to add, so if this person's put in that position, obviously there's more city staff working on the events. Are they going to be the ones supervising these individuals that are working at those events, or does it go back to the department where the individuals come? Say it's Public Works, it does the cleanup of the parks and stuff. Who's supervising them, and what costs are being allocated there? So maybe a little clarity on that. So do you eventually see this person managing those city events? Say we use the Santa Claus Parade. That person who's managing that event is in charge of everyone and responsible for supervising people at the day of the event? Is that how it works?
So the event, Mr. Mayor, the event coordinator would be determining what the roles and responsibilities are for each of the team members that are involved in the event. It would be their supervisors that would be responsible for overseeing their performance, but coordinating where the barricades go and where the signs go and notifying residents of street closures and that type of thing that we would, and we have, operationalize that activity. So, but their time gets charged towards the event.
And then just a follow-up question. How did you come up with the amount for this position? Is this a standard position other communities have? So we've picked this amount, and now is it going to be competitive where you can actually get a person to come for that, or do you have to increase it more to get someone to come here to do that position? Just sort of a little background on that. And just before you answer that too, and I agree with Councillor DeRose, like it'd be nice to see a bit of a business case for each change of staffing position. It doesn't have to be a long report, but just the highlights of what the change will do, what it'll bring, and the positive impacts and some of the negative impacts. I'm just looking for a one-pager. I'm not looking for a big one, but I think that'd be very helpful when you're looking at these positions, determine the usefulness in terms of moving forward and reduce some of the questions here. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is true, but also, and I tell all of council, if you have questions or you want to contact staff, you can do that at any time as well. So what we've heard on this position, and I'll throw this out, that we send this position back to staff for reevaluation and come back. Is everybody good with that? You've heard comments on some of the ideas from council, and maybe look at it, massage it, and come back, and then we can relook at that. Is council good with that? But obviously, we're not good with it the way it sits right now from the discussion I got here. Is everybody good with that? And then Jeff, you can come back with another look at that and see, how we want to proceed.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, with the, just for clarification, that's on the assumption that it will be only 2 city-sponsored events this year, which will be a 2-day Canada Day event and the Santa Claus Parade?
That's the angle we're looking at it based on the budget in front of us.
I'm happy to bring
right
back a
now.
report,
Would-
and we'll bring in the job descriptions and rates of pay of this type of position that exist in other municipalities like Lincoln and Pelham.
Thank you.
If I could, even a small thing like even as Henry and Carmen mentioned, a contractual agreement, if we could look into something as to per event.
Oh, you want that to be part of what he's looking
Because
at?
as Councillor Dan just said, and
Yeah.
Councillor DeRose said, a contract event as to,
At
instead
this
of
point,
hiring.
he's going to bring a report back. That should be included. Is there anything else before we move on? Okay, so staff's been given direction on that. Are we good with that? Okay?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned that you want us to call staff and deal with them. Do you think that's an efficient use of time? Do you want 8 of us calling our Director of Finance and speaking to her an hour for financial issues? Like, I thought it'd be better having a discussion here.
It's good to have it here, but there's some questions that can be handled very quickly with a phone call. And we were open to debate in the chamber as well. But I'm telling you that if you have a concern or something, you can get an answer before the meeting. Sometimes that's a positive as well.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree with that, but at the same time, too, I have constituents or taxpayers that are asking me questions, and if I bring the questions here, they see that I'm asking them, and they see that the answers come out, because sometimes people don't believe the answers you tell them, so if it's told by a staff person after I've asked the question, it makes a little bit more sense. But I don't mind working with staff, I think that's good, but I also respect their time, that I don't want to spend, like I said, if all of us spent an hour with one staff member, that's a full day where they're just answering questions of council. So I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. It'll be a little bit more of my time giving here as opposed to meeting with all the staff members, just so you know where I'm coming from. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so now we were moving on, and Councillor, you wanted to ask questions before, and I told you we were sticking to that one item, but if you want to expand now, go ahead, Councillor DeRoe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yes, to the fire chief, I just, is there any way, I just, yeah, I'll let you speak first, and then I just had a couple of questions. Can you just, the necessity of it? Obviously, in your opinion, we need it, just, it ends up being $175,500 on next year's levy, 2024. So I'm just a little concerned. It's almost a percentage point in the levy, so anything you could share with us would be great.
Go ahead, Chief Dixon.
Certainly, through you, Mayor. This position has been long overdue, and with our growth that's happening with this city as of late, and what's going to continue to happen in this city, one manager overseeing 90 employees, 18 full-time staff, 72 part-time staff. Currently, the fire chief is on call 24/7. Whether I go to conferences, seminars, vacation, I'm still responsible for what happens in the city with no managerial relief. So the whole operation of the fire service relies on me as the fire chief. We do a lot of things good. We've done a lot of things good over the past 4 years that I've been here. However, we need to be more efficient and more effective on how we operate our business. As you all know, the fire service is a very expensive business to operate. The second highest business in the corporation to run, and it's solely myself. So the importance of the deputy fire chief is to help split that workload. The deputy chief would help provide direction and assistance to the fire prevention department, which is the #1 line of defense for the fire service now. We don't do enough in the city of Thorold. We're lacking significantly in the city of Thorold in our fire prevention department. We need to get messages out there more and more. We don't do enough community work when it comes to fire prevention stuff. So with the additional fire prevention officer and the deputy fire chief, he can oversee that portion of the work to help bring those messages and the fire safety content to the citizens of Thorold. He will obviously help me in decision-making for the whole fire service, whether it be buying trucks, whether it be managing staff for that matter, and what's the best route to take. He would help with emergency calls. We could split the difference in emergency calls, who's on call for what calls, to help go to fire emergencies or any emergency. It doesn't have to necessarily be fire emergencies that we go to. So it's not solely on myself. The emergency management program that we have, we've improved immensely over the last 4 years. Currently, right now, we have our health and safety coordinator that is my alternate CEMC for the city. That job would now fall on the deputy chief's plate to be my alternate and work with me in the Niagara region and the rest of the 12 municipalities on emergency management. So overall, the assist of the fire chief with the administration, the operations of the fire service as a whole will improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of this service and where we need to go in the future. Community risks with the amount of population we're having east and south of us, and where our fire service needs to go. So that's my explanation for the purposes of the deputy fire chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait, I don't think Councillor Thorold's finished.
Yeah, no. No, thank you for the explanation. Now, is there any way a senior fireman can fill in and when needed? Is that possible to look within, so we don't have to hire another body?
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor DeRose, the rest of my staff is unionized. I did not mention that. I also have to deal with three separate unions. All staff in the fire services are unionized except for myself.
Okay, thank you. And the fire prevention officer, that's legislated, the one below it?
Correct. That was negotiated at the contract level.
And there's no way to have a fire prevention officer, deputy chief, all in one, or that's out of the question?
Again, through you, Mayor, one is unionized, one is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
I know in regards to the second position, that stuff in regards to the fire prevention officer. Are we going to utilize the fire prevention officer due to the chief and through Jason Simpson to help us in regards to the licensing issue? Because obviously we know with the licensing, one of the issues was the responding times, you may say, to the inspection. So is that the initiative? I know we're stuck with it and just wanting to see what we're going to do with them.
Jason or Terry or both of you, go ahead.
I'll start, Jason. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hanley, that is correct 100%. The residential licensing has been a good part of our process. However, we've got a lot of improving to do. It takes a lot of time. A lot of time is taken with landlords who don't take it seriously. So yes, 100%, it will help with that. We'll be able to concentrate on the residential licensing, and then another fire prevention officer could concentrate on the fire prevention aspects of the city.
Okay, second question, if I could.
Did you want to add anything, Jason, or that's good? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
We hire a fire prevention officer, we hire a deputy chief. Our new fire hall isn't ready yet. Where are we going to squeeze them in? I'm laughing because I'm thinking, where are we going to put these guys? Sorry, hey, we're on top of each other here. Can we build a second floor here? No.
I can't answer that question for you, Councillor.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Hanley, it's to be determined, but we do have some spots that we're going to have to double up some people in certain rooms at Station 1 on the main floor, and but by the time this all takes place, hopefully we'll only be a year out and we'll be into the new fire station, so it's short-term pain for long-term gain, shall I say.
So a question just off the end there. Have we ever determined what we're ever going to do at the upper floor of the senior center?
I think it's
is there going to be a determination? Are we ever going to use that for staffing purposes?
I think it's part. It's in the budget, so we'll get to that at some point.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. As soon as you can let me know when I can put a motion on the floor to accept the budget, would you let me know, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, Councillor Hanley. Okay. Is there any further questions on this page regarding these staffing positions? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to go back a little bit to the bylaw enforcement. I see there's a supervisor, a licensing, and 2 parking enforcement officers. Just a few questions along that line to Mr. Simpson. Regarding the parking enforcement officers, are they strictly going to be parking enforcement officers, or will they assist in the bylaw duties also? Is it going to be a dual role or just a single role?
Through the mayor, to Councillor DeAngelo, this position or these positions would be solely parking and not other enforcement duties. And that keeps the rate of pay lower than what a bylaw enforcement officer is. Okay. And we've seen that there is enough work out there to warrant full-time positions.
Okay, just, will there be additional, I know there's, the staffing costs are here listed on this page. Will there be additional other costs such as another vehicle, more office space? As Councillor Hanley pointed out, do we have the room for them? Is that something that is in the rest, it was included in the rest of the budget so that they're not coming back here for further equipment at this point in time if they're hired?
Through the mayor, good question. And yes, the added resources, capital resources have been included in the budget. As for seating position, we currently have a space that we have our temporary parking enforcement officer sitting in. That position expires at the end of March. So one of these positions would be replacing that temporary position that we currently have in place. And the 2 parking enforcement officers would not be working at the same time. The intention for the 2 is to have extended coverage within the municipality as far as time is concerned. So they would be sharing a workspace.
Can you just maybe let me know, like what's our current complement right at this moment in terms of the bylaw parking, just so the public understands what our constraints are right now?
Thank you. Through the mayor to you, Councillor DeAngelo. We currently have 2 bylaw enforcement officers who are dedicated to doing inspections and enforcement of the residential rental licensing program. We have an additional 2 bylaw enforcement officers that take care of everything else. So that's all the other bylaw enforcement and, if they have the opportunity, parking enforcement. And we currently have a temporary contracted parking enforcement officer. As I mentioned, that expires at the end of March.
So right now, we just have a temporary parking, so you're going from a temporary to 2 positions. That's what you're looking for?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, just, I know this came up earlier at one of the public forum meetings regarding the fees. And if you could refresh my memory here, is a report going to come forward regarding fees? I see that they're going up from the budget here. We're generating, this is the rental licensing program, just so you're clear. It's 230,000 was budgeted in 2022 for revenue, and then it's going up to 350,000. For the general public's knowledge, is that just more licenses being processed, or is that additional fees to the fees? Will there be a fee increase for the license that's currently out there right now?
Through the mayor, that number is based on just an increase in number. I do have intentions of bringing recommendations to council within the first half of the year on proposed amendments to the program to enhance the program or improve that service. And whether or not that comes with a proposal on increased application fees is to be determined.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I like when that report does come back through you, Mr. Mayor, if you can look at a graduated licensing cost, those that do a great job and fit into our community with low impact, maintain their houses, bylaw doesn't have to go out there, pay a lower fee, and those that are problematic houses, bylaws there every day, and are causing grief to our neighborhoods, those are the ones that should pay a higher price, because it is costing the city staff more time. And I know I brought it up, and then Councillor Droz brought it up too, as one of the ways of generating some revenue is I know we have just junk bills that go out. Are you looking at recouping an administrative fee off that to help offset the position of the licensing clerk? Is that something that you're exploring?
Through the mayor, so the licensing clerk is intended to be completely offset by the application fees that we receive. It could be offset by any penalties that are issued as well as a result of non-compliance with the bylaw, although we hope for compliance. There are quite a few items that will be coming forward to council this year with regards to bylaw enforcement and improvements, proposed improvements that could include enhanced penalties or application fees.
Okay, so, Mr. Mayor, I got other questions, but I think once that report comes forward, I think a lot of them will be answered at that point. So I think you've covered the ones I had for now. And I think it was brought up by Councillor Hanley regarding the fire prevention officer. So part of this licensing program, does part of that cost that we're collecting there actually cover the cost of the fire prevention officer? So that's picked up there, just for clarity.
Through the mayor, yes, a part of the revenue collected from residential rental licenses does go back to the fire department to offset their costs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Longo. I
just
thought
a
your
quick-
hand was up and thank you.
Yeah, it was
for
just a
reminding
quick question to bylaw. Councillor D'Angelo asked about the parking enforcement officers, and I know they're strictly allowed to do parking enforcement because they're not bylaw officers. But there's a pet peeve of mine and others in the community regarding these signs placed all over the place. Would they at least be allowed to pick up wow painting signs or I'll fix your basement sign or not?
Good point. Very good point.
Through the mayor, I can say that we could certainly evaluate the job description of the position. It's existing position, mind you, on contract, temporary, but it is a unionized position. So anytime we go and make adjustments to the job description, it would need to be reevaluated.
Go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor, what Councillor Longo is alluding to, maybe what we'll do is we'll let every city official who is driving in a city truck, if they see some illegal parking signs, maybe in the general that, just pick it up. I think that's what Councillor Longo is alluding to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's correct. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Just elaborate on what Councillor Long is saying, because are we not, you're allowed to put them up, but you have to buy a fee, or we ban them outright here. We ban them, you can't even buy a permit, right? There's no temporarily affixed signage allowed on boulevards, poles, whatever. It has to be commercial signage.
That is correct. Signage is not permitted on the city road allowance.
Yeah. I do think, and correct me if I'm wrong though, that if like the seniors are having a bazaar or something, they're allowed to put them up so many days before. There is something in the bylaw.
To you, Mr. Mayor, the signage is allowed to go up on private property.
Okay,
but not on the road allowance.
Not on boulevards. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for providing the clarity on the signage, because it's the public property ones that annoy people, that they're all over the place and people or companies just put them up no matter what. And if it's something that we need to look at so that our own city committees are not infringing on the bylaw, I think that something has to be reviewed, because they do put them up on city property, and if it doesn't state that in the bylaw, they're actually in contravention, so they should be picked up. So if that's the rule, then that should be enforced, but if that's a rule, we should look at changing it, because it doesn't meet the needs of our community. So, if you're gonna put rules out there, enforce them, and if you're not, change them. But I just, one thing I wanted to mention regarding bylaw to Mr. Simpson, if he can answer this. If we go ahead and hire these additional individuals in the bylaw department, are we gonna look at seeing if, will there be shift workage, because one of the concerns of one of the residents who brought forward issues in bylaw enforcement and also parking is that we don't have coverage throughout the whole day. We just have sometimes day coverage. Is this something that your department's going to look at to make sure that the coverage is throughout the whole 24/7 as opposed to just daytime hours?
Through the mayor to Councilor DeAngela, so the positions that are before council today in the budget would be required just to provide the service during daytime hours. We are working with the collective agreement, so we can't, we are bound by that. So there will be a report coming to council very shortly. I'm hoping, well, this is January 31st, so in February, with regards to enhanced service levels, such as evenings coverage, but and opportunities to potentially provide that service. But the current positions that are before you today would not be sufficient to be able to provide that.
Thanks for the clarity.
Thank you. Okay. So that covers that. Any further questions on that? Okay, let's keep going through as we move through the operating. And well, any further questions for staff? Go ahead, Councillor Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know I was speaking to the president of the Baseball Association. He submitted his intent was to submit a letter. I don't see it here. I don't know if the letter has come, and I know we're getting close to the 8:30 deadline.
You want to address those issues?
Well, what I
the
wanted
letter did come. You have a copy of it? The city clerk did get a copy. I think council's been copied on that. No?
No.
Okay, they haven't?
It was to be circulated this week through council correspondence.
Can you send that out before that, so that, but it's regarding some issues regarding baseball that they would like to be addressed in the budget.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I'm not going to speak to the issues because it's not fair to the other councilors that haven't seen the letter. But what I wanted to do is, I know we're getting close to today's deadline time, is if we could refer that letter that came to staff so they can look at some costing for some of the issues. That way there's better clarity for council when they're making a decision.
And that can come to the next budget session.
Yeah, that would be my intent. And
That's
then
good.
I
That's
guess
fine.
a secondary question to that, is there any other requests for other items that the council should be aware of? Because having it come on Friday doesn't give us the ability to ask
No.
staff to come back with some information, because if I get it Friday, then our next
that's
meeting's
good.
next Wednesday. Do you want me to call staff up and say, hey, do me a cost analysis on this? So I just want to make sure we're not missing anything else, so we're giving staff some appropriate time to bring information back for council, again, to make better educated decisions.
And I know the baseball items that'll come back. The only one item that I wanted, I don't know if we have to address it, is because we've been doing it now for probably 3-4 years, is the waiving of the patio license fees. Is that incorporated in the budget? Would that have to be addressed in the budget, or is that not a budgetary item anymore? I know it's not a big item. I
Through you,
think
Mr. Mayor, that is not included in the budget, and if I could bring back more information at the next meeting, because there have been some legislative changes, so.
I'd appreciate that. Okay? Yeah. Go ahead.
And something that would help me, Mr. Mayor, being new council, I don't know what user fees are actually charged to some of the user groups, such as if it's rental of the field, lighting, all that sort of stuff. We have a bit of a summary coming back to make sure if we want to discuss that. Like, I don't want to ask for a next budget meeting, because then that means we're going to be discussing it, just looking at it at that night. So can we bring anything back that is in relation to user fees and costs associated? Maybe some of the subsidies that we give different organizations, so I have a better understanding of what costs are associated there and what costs they have to pay for?
Yep, we can do that. Okay? Go ahead, Councilor Thorold.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I know Henry's a baseball guy, and I got a text earlier from President of Thorold Soccer, and he just, so I'm wondering, can he write a letter also to Matthew to disperse? Because he just said a couple minor things, like the clubhouse needs upgrades, outer upgrades, and they said something about a flagpole that was taken down, and they'd like to get it back. And the one thing I just want to put a plug in about soccer, I believe it was the Thorold Soccer Club members that raised the money to build the clubhouse and put up the lights. So just to let you know, for the amount of kids, there are probably gonna be over 600 kids playing soccer this year. It's very, very good value for our community, for a little bit of in-kind help.
So
Anyway,
we'll get
yeah.
those
I just wanted to
as
put a
well,
plug in
and
for that.
we'll make sure that that gets to staff so they can look at it. That would have to go also to Public Works and Community Services, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But those issues, it's good to bring them up so that they have time to prepare, because we have another budget meeting week tonight. No, next Wednesday, because we have council next Tuesday. That's correct. Okay, does anyone want to go any further today, or we can, it's 8:25, it's 8:26, we're scheduled to go to 8:30 if everybody's good. Can I get a motion to adjourn? That information will come back and we'll resume next Wednesday. Wait, sorry. I need to pass the bylaw for business, yeah.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, at the moment, the formal report was never put on the floor for discussion, so you would pass only the confirming bylaw, which essentially receives the presentation. That's the only formal business that was done, and it would confirm in the minutes any direction to staff through the discussion. What will happen by not having put the report on the floor is the report will automatically be moved to the next meeting where it will appear again.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we just need a motion for the bylaw, and then business is essentially done, and you can adjourn the meeting.
Okay, so I have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. This meeting is hereby adjourned at 8:27 until our second budget meeting, which will be held here next Wednesday at 6:30. As well, we have council next Tuesday at 6:30. Thank you.